Hi and welcome to Britain's Hidden History live show on Easter Sunday, and a happy Easter to those who celebrate it, welcome springtime for others and happy holidays for the rest. Today we have a replay of most of Ross's book launch for Wilson and Blackett book Where Jesus is Buried, and then we have part 2 of Paul Hartel's interview describing his long support of Britain's hidden history. But first, here's a new Arnie video to start today's show. The piece is called Neath a Cuckoo, The Cuckoo's Nest by Sean Phillips. Well done, Arnie. He's getting good, isn't he? So today we've got a couple of announcements to mention before the news. And the first one will be via PowerPoint picture. Well, Angie has negotiated with Watkins Bookshop in London for the sale of Cymroglyphics and Wilson and Blackett books. The shop has existed for over 120 years and specialises in the mind, body and spirit genre and everything esoterical. Here's a message from Danielle at the Glamorgannog community. Many of you may already be aware of the Glamorgannog micronation through previous mentions in live shows and at our recent market. As Indigenous people, our true history is very important to us, and therefore Britain's hidden history is very close to our hearts. We are currently fundraising to represent Glamorgannog at Microcon, which is an international conference of micronations. Angie has very kindly donated a signed set of the King Arthur conspiracy books to our fundraiser auction. Part 1 is signed by both Alan Wilson and Barham Blackett. And she has already kindly agreed that this is advertised on our Facebook group page and here for those who might be interested. Best of luck should you wish to place a bid. You can place your bids at www.glamorgannog, G for capital G, LAMORGANNWG.org. Now that picture hasn't come out very good, unfortunately, but you can see the size of that. Angie has received a massive poster to sell on Cymroglyphics, detailing the genealogy from Brutus. It's a king's list created by A.D. Marathi and is now available on the Cymroglyphics website. This chart includes the royal lineage of the illustrious British nation. It's a genealogy from father to son, or the app, which is successor to, covering over 2,500 years, linking together over 700 of the most illustrious of the British nation, including a multitude of kings, princes, queens and saints, along with the historical figures of many of the knights of the Round Table. This chart also includes the kings of the heroic era, King Taithfalt, Tudrig, Meirig, and of course Arthur II, he of the legendary Round Table. It also includes the family of King Arthur II, covering King Arthur's wives, brothers, sisters and children, along with Merlin, Merddin, Emrys and much more. So that's very interesting announcements. And as we've said every week, everyone is welcome to contribute video content. And we're still asking for new work urgently. There was a nice thank you from Richard from last week's posting. Angela or myself will act as liaison to publish them to the BHH YouTube channel. And if you publish straight to the Facebook group page, let us know that you'd like us to also put your video on the YouTube group page. Just message us by finding us on the Facebook group page under members. If you've got video content or a PowerPoint presentation inside your video, we'll hopefully include it in the Sunday show, because as I said last week, people like videos. In the news, our roving reporter Andrew James Reeves has visited Malton Museum in Malton, Yorkshire, which is located between York and Scarborough. And he went there to see the Pocklington shield on display in the museum. You can take a virtual tour of the museum on their website if you can't make it to Yorkshire. Here's Andrew's video.
Paul Boy here, today I'm at the Malton Museum and we are looking at the Pocklington Shield.
The Pocklington Shield, Yorkshire, England. In 2016, during excavatory works for a housing estate, this incredible shield was discovered inside a high-status burial, along with the remains of a chariot complete with rider and 2 horses. The remains have been dated to between 200 and 300 BC. The remains of the man, who was believed to have been in his late 40s, was found laid upon his shield in ritualistic fashion, leading experts to believe he was highly revered amongst his community. Despite the shield exhibiting incredible insular decoration, which was favoured in Britain and Ireland at the time, a puncture mark caused by a bladed object shows that the shield was functional and not just used for decoration.
Thank you, Andrew, and I'm sure we'll have more from you in the coming weeks. As promised last week, we have another news item contributed by Bob Morgan, and this time Bob is talking about the Chedworth Roman villa.
This is down at Chedworth, the Roman villa, and
Is that in Northamptonshire or?
No, Chedworth is just north of Cirencester. It's within
right.
about
I'm thinking of a different one then.
Yeah, with it. Yeah, this is one is within about 10 miles of where I live, and I actually missed this the first time round. I picked up on it only recently when I was looking back through some of the newspaper reports. And Chedworth is a Roman villa, so they say. Again, I disagree with that one for a couple of reasons. But and they got, it's one of the things they discovered a whole pile of Roman villa, and there's some really good mosaics there. And what they've done is they built the old sheds or shelters of the mosaics, so you can go to the site and you can view all these mosaics. Anyway, they were digging here and they've come up with found another building with another mosaic in there. But the interesting thing on where's it gone? Screen share stopped.
Click the wrong button. But that the date of that one you just showed said the mosaic was from something like 424 AD. And that's beyond the Roman period.
Yes, yeah, no, and that is exactly it. Yeah, that's the whole thing. It is they discovered this thing, and what they could do. There was organic material that the mosaics have been laid on top of, so they carbon dated that, which is why it was laid on top of, and it was actually laid on top of another mosaic that there was underneath it as well. So they knew that the organic material was laid down at the same time as the new mosaic was laid on the top. And again, lo and behold, when they date it, it's coming down to 424, 544, with it, yeah, after the Romans are supposed to have left.
Yeah.
So what it's strong evidence again that, hang on a minute, we don't need Romans. We never needed Romans to make mosaics. You know, we could do it ourselves, and we were doing it ourselves after the Romans had left. So if we were doing it themselves after the Romans had left, I think there's a high possibility we were doing it when the Romans were here as well.
Yeah,
In fact,
but the other one up in Northampton, Rudbury way, or that's been investigated. I know Marshall Abrams made a comment on the Britain's Hidden History Facebook group page when it was highlighted, and she basically said, well, that exact pattern has been seen somewhere else and it's definitely British.
yes, yeah. Well, it's like the Kharamid mosaics. When they uncovered those, yeah, everyone agreed that they were in inverted commas again, they were Celtic Celtic imagery rather than Roman imagery, which is one of the reasons why Wilson Blackett say that it was very quickly reburied, never unearthed again. So yeah, I just think again, it's one of these things. You know, again, we might not invented the mosaics, but when the Romans came over here and they wanted some mosaics, I'm sure that they brought some 45 people over here, and they were taken on, if you like, apprentices or something,
Yeah.
you know, to learn how to do it, because it is time consuming and pretty tedious work.
Yeah.
And I'm sure the Romans would rather pay someone, pay a local to do it. You know, it's like a cleaner, isn't it? You know, you'd rather pay the cleaner to clean your house rather than do it yourself. I'd rather pay someone to do the mosaics for me rather than do it myself. And so I think that the skills were here. They keep on trying to maintain that that we were savages and ignorant and uneducated when the Romans came. And it just isn't true. You know, where we could do these things, and it's just they keep and again with this one here, they've got this mosaic now, which is evidence that the Brits can do it themselves. And what's the first things they do? Instead of like all the other mosaics they got, they put a nice little shed over the top of it, protect it from the elements so you can come and view it. What have they done with this one? Reburied it.
Yeah.
And you can see that is there a pattern here? Kharamid, Celtic mosaics. So we better rebury that then. Oh, this one. Oh, it shows that the Brits could do it themselves. We better rebury that one then. And as I said, I missed this in even in the local press because there was only one mention of it. Is it a deliberate policy? You know, when you get these situations, do we just rebury them and forget about it? You know, no one can see it.
Oh.
So basically, these were just some of the bits and pieces that I picked up, and these were the kind of things that I would be picking up on a weekly basis. I'd be putting them into a PowerPoint and having a Zoom call with Ross, and we discuss them. And I say some of them would make it onto the show, and some of them were just. Quite a lot of it was some of the things that Ross and I were interested in and debating and discussing, because not coming to any firm conclusion as at the time, because we were coming from different directions on it, and there were pros and cons on the arguments, and the dating of the Sutton should both be in one, because he was firmly of the belief it was younger, whilst I'm firmly of the belief it's older.
Well, me and you won't be debating it. Whatever you say goes. I
No.
have any knowledge.
No. That's one of the very things that Ross and I could agree on. You know, you can't have your position can't be fixed. You might come at it from one direction and think, but once you start looking and getting some evidence and things like that, you've actually got to go where the facts and the evidence take you. And sometimes it doesn't take you where you think it should be.
Or where you want it to go, yeah.
Or where you want it to go. But unfortunately, the facts are the facts, you know.
This is
but
it.
the problem as always is the interpretation of the facts. And one of the ones I always used to flag up to Ross was President Kennedy was shot in full view on television in front of you know, thousands of people, you know, millions of people perhaps, in fact, shot in front of it. And here we are now, what's that, how many years now after the States? More than 50, 60 years now. And we still don't know what happened. You know, the basic facts are certain. He got shot. But the interpretation of the facts and who did it and why they did it.
Why?
It's just become a minefield. And ultimately, it's got to the point now where you could probably, there's so much evidence, contradictory evidence, there's so much disinformation been fed out, there's so much that you probably never ever come now to a definite conclusion. And that again is you know, is the conversation we were always having on that. Well, what are we trying to do with Britain's hidden history? And it was always, well, we're looking at the work of Wilson and Blackett, which is Wilson and Blackett, which is the central core of what we're trying to do, and we're trying to actually find more facts and evidence to actually justify, you know, their
support them or to correct them, one or the other.
But equally, Ross and I always made it clear that, well, if we find evidence which contradicts that, well, you have to go where the evidence is, you know, because at the end of the day, if you find new evidence that trumps your old evidence, well, you've got to go with the new evidence. But where we are at the moment is we haven't got a lot of real evidence and facts. We've got a lot of opinions, assertions, and half facts, and what facts we do have are subject to interpretation. You know, they're not conclusive because we don't have the entire jigsaw puzzle.
Yeah.
You know, we might have a bit of the edge, but we don't know whether the edge is sort of like 20 inches long or 40 inches long. You know, we don't know whether we got the standard size jigsaw or the jumbo jigsaw. But we know we got some bits and pieces, and all we're trying to do is just find more pieces to put and put them in the right place, ensure that they go into the right place in the jigsaw.
Sounds like a plan.
That's where all the fun is, because you know wherever we go. I mean, I've been out with Steve Pope this week to Money again. I've been out there so many times, but every time we go out there, we find something new. And that one day you might find another little crucial bit of the jigsaw puzzle and said that's the bit missing, or we've got to turn that bit which we put that way. If we turned it upside down, it now fits, and we get another bit of the story. Yeah, it's all good.
Well, thank you very much, Bob. That's a fabulous news roundup.
Yeah, that's well. Some of it's now old news, but you know, it's we need to try and get it going again, because Ross always saw that the news roundup was always an essential part of the Sunday show, because as things come out, we just let all the members know that something new has been found, and people who have gone interested in that perhaps era or that aspect of what's been found can then delve into it and look into it, and then report back.
Yeah,
that's what it's all about.
Agreed. Well, thank you, Bob. That's a very interesting item, and more from Bob next week. So next up we have Ross introducing the book Where Jesus is Buried. Now the full version of this video can be found on the YouTube channel, probably under the book review playlist. And more than 2,500 people have watched it, but as we have 8,000 plus subscribers, there'll be plenty who have yet to see it. And I first discovered the Britain's Hidden History YouTube channel because of the publishing of this book. As I had said to a friend who is a mutual Wilson and Blackett fan, that Wilson and Blackett had a manuscript written on the subject yet to be published. Then one day he advised me that he had seen an advert for it, and guess what? The publishers had a Facebook group named Britain's Hidden History. Well, and the rest is history. And here's Ross talking about the book.
So I guess I should give a quick, if you're new to, didn't know about this book, it seems extremely controversial, because it is. So we have Where Jesus is Buried, after the Holy Family, how the Holy Family came to Wales after the crucifixion, and Britain became the world's first Christian country. By Wilson and Blackett, and I've had the honour and privilege of editing and compiling the book. All right, and doing the layout and stuff, so it's been a real honour and a privilege. A little tribute to the great men there on the inside cover, and it's the first new Wilson and Blackett book for a number of years. So I think it's only fair I give you an idea of, so I'm just opening the book up here, and acknowledgements. Thank you very much, it's been a wonderful, I will just give an idea of what the book's about, okay? Just a short one. I'm going to put some more videos up dealing with some of the topics involved. And if you want to order the book, it's available now. So I think the introduction of part 1 is probably a good place to explain the basic concept of this book. I'll tell you what I'll do, let you have a look at the cover while I'm talking as well. So just read the back cover off for you. So the book reveals who Jesus was, the politics of the period, and how he and his supporters fled the persecution of the Roman Empire to seek refuge in Britain. From there it can be seen that the Holy Family and British royal family intermarried to create a dynasty that would be a permanent threat to the later Roman Church and Anglo-Saxon narrative. To avoid persecution, the messages and knowledge were hidden in the ancient records, carved stones, Welsh place names. After decades of research, Wilson and Blackett are finally making their findings public, and the results will truly shock you. The burial places of the royal and holy families are still there and can be visited today, and you get details in the book of where they are. This book strikes at the very core of what the Christian message really is, and where Christianity began before going to Rome, okay? So, I'll just read the introduction, just the first few paragraphs, okay? Not the whole thing, obviously. Part 1, introduction, conflicting faiths. The Roman Church claims that Jesus the Nazarene stood on a street corner in Jerusalem, and then he ascended up to heaven in a cloud of mist. They call this the Ascension, and precisely where Jesus headed for up there in the stratosphere is not defined. The British Apostolic Church believed that Jesus survived the crucifixion and came to Britain, where he finally died and was buried. The Roman Church claims that Western Christianity started in Rome, and that Peter was the first pope. The British Apostolic Church claims that Western Christianity began in Britain, was very different from the version portrayed in churches, and that Linus, a member of the British royal family, was the first Bishop of Rome. In fact, Peter never was the Bishop of Rome. I've added that bit. The British Apostolic Church also claims that the Holy Family married into the British royal families, and that their descendants carried the holy blood. These rival accounts of history have been at the heart of the hostility towards British identity and suppression of its history, religion and culture that has been going on for almost 2,000 years. One version is correct, and the other is incorrect, and the reader is free to support whichever he or she chooses. There you go. And I'll just give I think it's just give you a quick idea. I should put a list of the chapters up. I'll just read out the chapter headings, because I'll give you an idea of the structure of the book then. So we have, hope not get interrupted. So something about the conflicting faiths. Come in. Chapter 1 is about the Essenes, and it shows how we got the Essenes, and what you'll find there is a discussion of the Essenes and how their life practices can be seen in the Bible and would seem to reflect how Jesus lived. Then we got Holy Kings and Queens. This more discussion about the British royal family being holy, claiming to have the holy blood. Celtic fairy tales, a bit of a cheeky title, because it shows how the policy started in the 1700s to make all this British history and Christianity into some sort of Celtic fairy tales. Because, of course, there's no Celts in Britain or Ireland, nothing to do with the Celts. They're off in France somewhere. It's one of these myths, that's why it's called fairy tales. So then we got the politics of Judea and Rome. It's a curious thing. So we're looking at the Bible, we should look at the political context. So this gives the history of how they got to the 1st century, this boiling pot of insurrections and all sorts of things going on. And this is where Wilson and Blackett's genius really comes in, analysing all that, and they created it. And then the obvious question, really, who was Jesus? There's a billion Christians in the world. Who was he? The Bible gives him a genealogy, so he might be the son of God, but he's also got a earthly father, if you like, and a family tree. And I think most people know by now that the idea of being a carpenter was just a myth, really, invented in the 300s, I think, or a mistranslation. And he was clearly from a royal family, and this explains that, and who his wife's family was, because he was certain to be married, otherwise it had been really, really commented on, because for that period, not to be married at his age would have been very strange. And then we bring in who his son was. I know, this is where it gets difficult for some people to get their heads around it, okay? Chapter 6 is the strange crucifixion, talking about the grisly subject of how crucifixions work and how long they take, and how Jesus is only actually on the cross for a few hours, and how that was arranged. The politics behind it is brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant, explaining how the power struggle between the factions supporting people like that had a choice at the time. Tiberius was exiled on his island, and Sejanus was slowly taking power over Rome. So there's a clever political game people had to play. People like Herod and people like that, and Pilate, and these people you know from the Bible, because you didn't want to upset Sejanus, because he was a ruthless piece of work and he could probably kill you. But if Tiberius suddenly came back because he realised what Sejanus was doing, then he didn't want to upset him either. So he had a real difficult situation. One of the difficult situations was trying to rule Judea, where he had a full-blown insurrection going on, which Jesus was the leader of. And it's so clever how the politics is broken down. That's Will Wilson and Blackett genius at work, explaining how you can't just, you've got to make sure there's still someone there, because if Sejanus comes back, you might want a puppet king to use, so you can't just kill them all. But there again, for Tiberius when he comes back, but there again, to keep the current faction happy, you've got to be seen to be dealing with the insurrection. So how do you find a middle ground? How do you negotiate that? And it suddenly, everything in that whole part of the New Testament makes sense when you read this. It's fantastic. So then you've got the situation where he's supposed, officially, Jesus has been executed, whereas news is going around everyone talking about how he's walking around. He's alive. It says in the Bible he's alive. It says he eats meals and you can touch him and everything. So where the idea that ghost comes in is a later invention, if you like. It's not what the Bible says. There we go. I'm getting deep water. I can feel the hate coming already. God is love, don't forget. So remember that when you're commenting. And also, Alan Wilson's very, very clear. I've done interviews with him and promoted him, and so have I. This is not an attack on Christianity, okay? It's not an attack on God or beliefs or Jesus or anything. It's what the book is showing, how the version that's been handed down through the church or created by the church in the 4th century is different to the version the British Christians followed. All right? You can choose which one you prefer, but they are different. All right? And that's what the book's basically about. And then you've got how Paul was a bit of a politician and what his family background was, who he was, and how he had to make this sort of compromise situation where, we got a problem here because someone's walking around who shouldn't be, and there's a new faith. So first of all, he got persecuted, as we all know, and was killing Christians, and then he found a better way to infiltrate and become Paul. And his new version of Christianity, which did the political fix. Very interesting. Then the myth of Peter in Rome, this idea that Peter was the first bishop of Rome and he probably never even went there, is bizarre. So we go through all that. Then part 2, events move to Britain. So we got story of Joseph Aaron and the Theatre in Wales. You might be already familiar with some of that, so it's more brought together. Then chapter 10, Renaissance knowledge, how you can see the old paintings like Poussin, where it tells you this story, it's there. Same as the King's List, chapter 11. Because the academics are going, a lot of rubbish, these Welsh king lists. They don't know what they're talking about. Because look at list A, doesn't match this B, doesn't match this C. The first few names match, the last few names, but the rest is just jumbled, made up rubbish. Well, actually, that was the whole idea, because they're coded. You don't even need, you need to be able to read Welsh, not even, or just translate Welsh. And you can see then, if you're clever like Wilson and Blackett, how they're not, the first few names are there to throw people, because they're real names. Bottom the last few names are real names, and the rest is actually words. It's a message, and you can read about the crucifixion, how he's got back. And then you've got things like the songs of the graves. You can actually see where he's buried. I know, it seems bizarre, doesn't it? But this, yeah, it's well backed up, and it was believed, and there's, Wilson and Blackett would argue, the reason for this permanent persecution of, or this conflict between Britain and the Roman Church, where it's been a constant threat. It might even have been one of the triggers for provoking Claudius to invade in 54 AD. And then, of course, having one of his daughters marry into the British royal family, presumably to part this holy family. So it's heavy stuff, but it's written in the usual Wilson and Blackett punchy kind of way. So then we got chapter 12, Secrets from the Past, which is some stones and other pieces of evidence to back up this is what happened. And then got cheekily, they're named as 13, Not Concealed Forever, because officially it just shows the mess was made of translations, and The Grave of Arthur Concealed Forever is this famous translation that every Arthurian book always plastered on the cover or near the front, and Wilson Blackett shows a mistranslation, doesn't say that at all. It actually tells you where he's buried. So there'll be more about the burial site of Arthur, King Arthur II, the Glamorgan and Gwent, another book. But this book, chapter 13, does give you the details of how you can work out for yourself where Jesus is buried. And we've been there in our pictures from the site and stuff. So that's pretty good stuff, pretty heavy. As a little epilogue from me, because a lot of this research was done 90s, so it took almost 30 years ago, or 30 plus years ago. But Wilson and Blackett have always considered it to be, I know, amazing when you consider the stick they've had for what they did publish. They considered this to be too controversial. They didn't want to upset Christian friends. They didn't want to upset the church. They didn't want to bring themselves. They just want to stick to the history more. But now they've reached the stage where let's do it. Because what's there to lose? I mean, the church needs to realise they're shutting down in droves. They're empty. The reason my local chapel's still going is because you've got the refugees from all the chapels nearby that have already closed. And this one will follow soon, I think. So it's a crisis point. And in here, I'm slightly off the track. This isn't beyond the scope of the book. But there's a more plausible explanation for what happened in the Bible. And you're not throwing the Bible out or attacking the Bible. 90% of the quotes in this book are from the Bible. The Bible does tell you it's been twisted since, is what this book argues. And I have to say, it hasn't affected my faith. It's made my faith stronger, actually, because it's a much more plausible story. And I prefer the idea of, I'll just stick to the review of the book for now, okay? Let's just say I think it's good news that Jesus wasn't up there for days and days getting brutally murdered in a horrible way. And that it was something more humane was going on. And he hopefully lived out a long and happy life in Wales long after the crucifixion. And became, that's the basis of the links, the legends of the Fisher King. So I see it as good news all around. I don't see the need for extreme suffering and death to be the only way an omnipotent God can bring salvation to people. So please don't see it as an attack on Christianity. It's not. It's just an attack on the way Christianity, the story's been changed and twisted. And in here a lot of it explains how that was done, how a lot of fictional books are written in the 1st and 2nd centuries, which have homilies and all these other books, and how they've slowly become seen as part of the Bible somehow, or a factual part of the story when they're not. So that's an important part of the book I should have mentioned. Then we've got appendices, a guide to go into Nevern, about the bishops at the Council of Arles, which was carried out not long before the Council of Nicaea, and it shows there that the British bishops were there. Christianity was flourishing, and they had the seniority in these meetings. Everyone knew. The Vatican records confirm that British Christianity started about 36-37 AD, just a few years after crucifixion. And also in the 120s or so, it became the world's first official Christian country. The soldiers started putting the crosses on the shields to show they were the Christian force, hundreds of years before Rome or anywhere else. So it's a really, really important book. And then we got something, a slight report about Dinas, which is this sort of holy island off the west coast of Wales, and then a guide to Llanthony Abbey. So there we go. So please get the book. It's available from the website now, as I think it's all right. So as I always say, and I particularly want to emphasise it now because I can feel some people get very, very emotional and heated about this subject. They have real problems discussing it politely and rationally and explaining problems with things. We're getting stick for this book for months. We don't even know what's in it yet. So God is love, and I always wish everybody peace at the end of my videos, which in Welsh is Heddwch.
Heddwch indeed. Well, that video contains some lovely philosophy from Ross towards the end of it, and it always remains a pleasure to watch Ross in action, and we'll continue to have regular reruns of his unique live shows. And some of us may have heard the expression songs of the graves, and this, when I heard it recently, reminded me of a short video that I saw that Alan and Barham had made and put on YouTube quite some years ago, in which they allude to the manuscript they had prepared, which has now become that book. You may have heard of the title Eli Ne. Well, this short clip explains it all. Well, that was interesting, wasn't it? Some dodgy spelling in there and one dodgy date. It was 1800s, not 800. I don't think the websites are still active, but you can find the video on YouTube if you search for Alan Wilson, Song of the Graves. So mention was made of Joseph of Arimathea, having brought Jesus and the Holy Family to Britain circa 37 AD. His grave site is well published in the Wilson and Blackett books, and of others, such as a book about Mael Gwyn of Llandaff. I think that's by Alan Clark. Now, Paul Hartel said that Joseph had originally been interred in St Mary's Church, located near to where the Blackfriars built their abbey. And we were in Cardiff last week, so we popped over to Bute Park to see both sites. Unfortunately, I could only find the Blackfriars foundations. Here's my short video. So that's the grave of the Bishop of Bethlehem, who was expelled from Bethlehem at some point in time, lived out the rest of his life in France, and then upon death wanted to be buried close to Joseph of Arimathea, whose grave is over there in the nave, and this says Blackfriars Monastery, Abbey, Bute Park, Cardiff. Where Margaret is standing, that's the grave of the wife of one of the Butes, who obviously knew the story and wanted to be buried similarly to Joseph of Arimathea. So there's an altar there, and there's the Honourable Dame Lelgarde Harry Florence Bellingham, daughter of the 23rd Baroness Cray de Ruthin and co-heiress to Barony Dame of Grace of St John of Jerusalem, born 1870, second wife of Sir Henry Bellingham, Bart, died 15th of October 1939. Rest in peace. Quite an extensive abbey, this. And there's the grave where Margaret is standing, supposedly of Joseph of Arimathea. Now, when the Victorians opened it up, they found a skeleton of one male and two females. And this is known as St Mary's Church. So therefore, one of the females, if not both, may have been one of the Marys named in the Bible. It's a model representation of what Blackfriars Abbey would have looked like. I'm in my own shadow here now. There we are. So that building is relatively modern in comparison with the original, having been moved into that building from an original building, St Mary's Church, which is over in that direction. Well, last week we had part one of a detailed interview with Paul Hartel. Paul and I have spoken at length about his long support for Britain's hidden history, and I know you'll enjoy his insights, videos and photographs. Today we have an edited part two, which includes a short introduction in case you missed part one. In the week I'll put the whole interview on the YouTube channel as a standalone production, with of course only the one introduction. Today I'm speaking with Paul Hartel from Los Angeles, California, about his very long and colourful association with Alan Wilson, Barham Blackett and Britain's hidden history. Welcome, Paul.
Hey, welcome, Paul. It's nice to see you. Very, very happy to see you.
It's a real pleasure to see you too. So how did you get involved with Alan Wilson and Barham Blackett then?
Well, I've always been a King Arthur fan, and so I've always been interested in it. And in the early 2000s, I mean very early 2000s, I was working at NBC, so I was very busy. But I came across a copy of The Holy Kingdom that they wrote with Adrian Gilbert, and my imagination just, caught fire again, and my passion was reignited. And I reached out to them, tracked them down, and got hold of them, and we started emailing back and forth. In those days, they still were active on email.
Yeah.
And I arranged some trips over. My goal was to produce a documentary. And so I was just filming myself, just shooting whatever little bit, I would grab a few times. I would, put the camera on a tripod or on a wall or something if we were out visiting sites, and try to grab stuff that I knew as an editor I would want to put together into a presentation piece that we would show to the networks.
Yeah.
And of course, that's Tintern. And that's when we were out. We went on our way to Mathern, because I, of course, videoed Alan in Mathern, and we have that video in British Hidden Histories, where he talks about digging up the king, or I don't think they had to dig him up, but they just uncovered the grave, and twice since he was buried in the church there.
Yeah, and that's part of the proof, isn't it? That the skull had a head wound.
Right.
Exactly as recorded.
Right. So the thing about Arthur, of course, is that, and here's the plaque inside the church, and it's hard to read in this particular picture because of the reflections, but it talks about his battle, and it talks about having the coffin being dug up and then reburied. And and then these are some shots you can see. This is I'll open this up.
Yeah,
These
I recognize what it is.
This is the core at St. Illid's, which, it's hard to see, but there's the hill, and of course it's all overgrown now with trees.
Yeah, it's very hard to take a photograph to express the donut shape and the height and width of it. Very difficult.
And I shot these from in. I'm a videographer, and I'm much better now, but when I was back 20 years ago, I didn't really know what I was doing when I was just taking pictures. So these pictures are not very good. This one turned out really well, and I used this as sort of the logo for my whole hidden history project.
Right.
And then, of course, you can say, and this is it. Sorry, we switch places here, but these are from the Merthyr Mawr stone collection. So these were the stones that were out in the shed, and you can see there's the stone for Paulus. You can just read a little bit here, Paul Philly, and then who knows, we could, if someone really cared, they could recover more of the etchings on these. Here too is another, you can see the wheel.
Yeah. I just saw a picture of that cross in a stone in, where was it? In America somewhere. They're calling it a Templar's cross, but it's exactly that shape.
Oh, Yeah, well, it's definitely, this was a grave outside the church here, which I don't think, I think this is Iltid's now, not Illid's.
Right.
I think I jumped, but this was a grave outside of that.
Yeah. So you can see the age in that one, can't you?
Right, and Alan was sure that it might be somebody significant. And there, of course, he is in front of St. Telos. It might have been Telos.
Yeah.
And
Yes,
there's Alan years ago. And I haven't heard. Have you heard anything? Did they get him home?
As far as I know, he's still in the care home on respite. 2 weeks of respite. This will be a second week, I imagine.
Oh, brother.
That church is the one in Merthyr Mawr, and so the stone that you were talking about would be in the shed, open to the public and the weather, apart from
Right.
the roof, right behind the church. So you can just go there any time of the day and take a look at those stones.
So there's that, and then of course we went to visit Caermelin. Now I know that you talked with Keith Price, who has a theory that the mountain called Pen Arthur, which is out his way, I think somewhere, I don't know.
He just called it Pen Castle.
Pen Castle.
Yeah.
He's, I guess, going to propose that that might be the site of Camelot. And, you know, since none of these sites have been excavated, I guess we, you know, at this point, we can't necessarily know. But 20 years ago, Alan felt that Caermelin, the Yellow Fort, was probably the site for Caermelin, and so we went to visit, and here you can see some of the buried foundations, and this is all right next to the farm. I'll jump ahead. You and I have chatted, but here's the farm, and these are the fields immediately adjacent to the farm. So I know you said that further away there are some exposed foundations that the public can walk into from another entrance.
From the Traveller's Rest.
From the Traveller's Rest, right.
Yeah, I just didn't realize they might be the same place. I'll have to go there again and take a look in relation to farming.
I don't know. Alan knew the farmers here, and so we actually drove up and chatted with the lady, the wife, and then, you know, got permission to wander around the site. And so this, of course, was him. This is backed out a little bit, so you can see how large this hill is. I mean, photographs exaggerate a little bit, but you know, you can see the steps for that. I mean, there is definitely stuff that's buried. Now that's, oops, let me go back. That's just looking off towards the river, and you can see that the views from the site are really commanding. So
yeah,
definitely, there was definitely something important here for centuries. Now, whether it goes all the way back to the Dark Ages, I don't know, but no one's ever done an excavation. Again, you can just see all the hillocks, and where there would be, you know, ruins underneath.
And that's right above the fields in Rubina, suburb of Cardiff, North Cardiff. And the fields in Rubina was supposedly where the horses were grazed. And the name is the clue to that. I forget what it is in Welsh, but it's in one of the books, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's right below where they would have grazed. And that was the photograph of Cardiff city centre.
Right, they're there. I think you told me what these buildings were here.
The one that's closest, that one, that's the government building in Llanishen, due to be knocked down. And the one to the left of that is the tall one in the centre of Cardiff on Greyfriars or Blackfriars, one or the other, Greyfriars. And you can see the Millennium Stadium to the right.
And that's this here.
That's
right?
the Principality Stadium, Cardiff Arms Park.
Yeah. And
And
of
then-
course, when on this particular visit, I was staying over here at the Jury's Hotel.
Yeah.
Right
And
here.
that headland beyond is Penarth, Head of Arthur.
Right here.
Yep, exactly there.
This was the street in Cardiff where Bob Sunman, whom I know that Ross got up to visit, but Bob was closely allied with Allen and Barham for a period of time. And during the time of my visit, he was, I don't care about this castle. I know it's a famous castle that they all,
It's a tourist.
yeah, it's a tourist attraction. And we went, they took me there, but it was like,
It's featured in a lot of films. And that was the one where I mentioned Oliver Cromwell, Oliver Watkins, I think he was
at the
born.
Griffin. Yeah.
I don't know if he was born in the Griffin, but he was born in Lisvane, which is the suburb you're at there.
We went in and had something to eat at the pub. And then this was one of the, I can't read the sign from here, but this was one of the churches that.
I think it's right opposite the pub.
And then this is also, I don't know, it's out of order, but this is also in the, this is the Bodvok stone. And this is also, I think, in the Merthyr collection. So.
Or is it in Margam?
Well, I mean, sorry, yeah, the Margam, it's in the back there with all the other stones, because you can see the other ones behind it.
Yeah.
And
I think that might be in the Stone Museum at Margam. I'm not sure.
And then here, of course, is the stone when it was in place. There's a picture of it.
Yeah, well, that's impressive.
I would guess that that's still there. And then this was the stone behind it. And we're not going to take the time to read it now, but
I think one of the American groups came over and did a lot of work on reading the stones in Margam.
Probably, but I mean, it's highly likely. Of course, we Americans are fast. Now, I am of Welsh descent. I do have Welsh blood in me, which makes me feel more attached, I suppose. But
Yeah.
the stories themselves are enough to, I think.
I think they were a religious group, so their angle was to find the 10 tribes and the proof through the language of Coilbren and whatnot.
Right.
So that's why they were over here interested. He's a smart-looking animal.
That's one of Bob's dogs, I think. Remember, I think we took, and then of course this is
Llandaff Cathedral.
Llandaff Cathedral, which I shot. We've got a little video of me inside that I shot, and that was closer to 212 when I came back. And
I've seen it, and you incorporated Baden as well.
oh, that's
I'll
right.
dig that one out.
I think I might too, because there's the window, and of course, it's just so frustrating to me that that the Welsh, at least 100 years ago anyway, and I don't know how old these stained glass windows are, but they're obviously 19th century.
Yeah, they're definitely in the Victorian era.
Right.
Some were replaced in the 1930s, but not them. They're older.
And they understood these connections, but they guard them very closely, right, to their chest. They don't. And then, of course, the academics, even at the University of Wales, are all principally put in place by the English, and they don't seem to have any interest in really going out and investigating the popular, I'll use the term, the popular folklore, since that's what they would call it. But it's just it's criminal, really, because it as Ross would say all the time, you know, these here we go. So now we're down near Nash Point, and this is just the estuary, but I'm going to get and this is now I believe this is this picture may be out of this is a great boat burial here. I'm not sure if this is now at Nash Point.
Yeah, that's Nash Point. You can see the lighthouse to the right.
Okay, so it is Nash Point. Then this is the great boat burial that Ross visited, you know, and he's made a video of being down at Nash Point, and he was at this site. But what he did not go see was further up the rise along the cliffs here, and we'll see this. You can see it right here, but I'll show you a better picture in a second. There's Alan standing on what he believes is the grave of Bedwyr, one of Arthur's knights. And we'll get a better view of it in a second. But so Alan's standing there, and this is a wider shot so you can see. So there's the remains of the grave. That's Bob Sunman standing and staring off to sea, and there's Alan on top of it. So you get some idea. Now, this was already now almost 20 years ago, so Lord knows if you could even find this.
Yeah, I think a couple, Bob Morgan and a couple of others, were looking for it in January.
So I mean, maybe this will help. I can send you these pictures, Paul, so you can share them with Bob.
Okay.
And maybe there's Alan, just
lovely photo, lovely shirt.
Yeah, he looks good in blue, huh?
Yeah.
And there's Bob. There's a good shot of Bob with his dogs 20 years ago.
Wow.
Now, sadly, of course, they had a falling out now. But anyway, and then now we're back in Butte Park, and this is, as you saw in the video.
Yeah, the original St. Mary's Church, maybe.
Yeah, it's quite possible. The remains of the church, and then just some shots of those. The light was very pretty that day. So those
that was very enlightening. I hadn't seen those before. I've seen the Blackfriars.
Right, which is
modern.
just a few steps away.
Yeah, and calling that modern, how old is that?
What, the Blackfriars?
Yeah, the Blackfriars.
Yeah. Well, that's why, I mean, and there's that, like the and this is really, all right around here.
Yeah, and that really shows the possibility of that area being an island, because that's the docks feeder on the right, a canal that's been made. But originally the river was moved by Isambard Kingdom Brunel, so that he could build Cardiff General Station on a marsh. So they moved the river from one side of the stadium over to the other side. And the proof of that, apart from the drawings from the Victorian era, is the name of the streets. You've got Key Street, Womanby Street, which is Icelandic. Womanby is Viking. But they the key was the other side, and that's inland now, if you like, away from the river. But that picture there does show that it could have been the island of orchards.
Apples,
Orchards, yeah.
Yeah,
Avalon come out to the name of Avalach,
right.
which
No.
is, I think that's where they were taking Tudrig, wasn't it? Arthur's
That's where,
grandfather.
that's where he was trying to get to, but he passed away close to where they built the church, where he's been ultimately buried. So,
because I used to think that the island of Avalon might have been Steep Home or maybe Flat Home out in the estuary, but having read more about it now, it's definitely more likely to be Cooper's Field, Butte Park, exactly on the pictures there.
I think this is, okay. So we've gone through the pictures here anyway. Yeah. Okay. So listen, we've got one more thing we've got time for today. And because we have to get you off to your next one. But as we talked about, I shot a lot of video. I have a lot of video. This video I did not shoot myself, but Alan shared it with me years ago. And this is actually a snippet because, again, as we know, hold on a minute. Let me stop sharing. Well, actually, wait, I might as well just keep sharing since I think you can see me as well, right? You have,
yes.
Okay. So anyway, because, of my reluctance to share specifics that might excite people, I'm not a big fan of that because I want the proof to be legitimized, and that means getting archaeologists. And in all my efforts to get my series produced, and everybody turned me down. I had a lot of partners at the time who were well established, but Nat Geo, History, Discovery, they all said, well, they weren't interested. And I think principally it was because also around that time, that news journalist had done that show about Al Capone's vault, in which he was going to it was a live show on air in which he was going to open up this vault that had once been owned by Al Capone. And he did it on air, and the vault was empty. So it was a complete bust. The show was just, kind of like a failure in that there was no payoff. And so that was some of the feedback that I would get. Well, we can't take a risk that you're not going to find anything. And then of course, archaeology is expensive and time consuming, and they never want to spend a lot of money or spend a lot of time creating these shows, which is why when you see a show that today that goes, where a host or a presenter goes looking for the Grail, they all just rehash the same story they've been telling for 20 years, right? They never go to any place new. They wind up visiting France. They go to, if they're looking for the Ark, they maybe go to France. They always go to Ethiopia these days and shoot outside, again, St. Mary's Church. So St. Mary gets around. She has a lot of churches, but anyway, back in the day, because of their commitment, their energy, and their interest and their connections, they had a friend who worked very closely with them, Alan Hassel, who had developed a device principally to be used for searching for lost artifacts in the surf, so on, you know, in the shallow waters, you know, near the sand, or, you know, in a low stream, I guess. But he went with them to quite a few sites, and you and I have chatted before, and you've seen his visit to the Cave of the Cross, which we're not going to show today, but we will show this site, which I hope to be somewhat obscure. And I will move this over, and this is Alan's visit to the site he calls the Mountain of Gold.
It's big. This is like a mountain of gold, but then again there is a treasure there. There's a story about a treasure of a mountain of gold. Is this it? Everywhere. This is... Incredible. I've never ever experienced anything like this in my life. It's unreal.
We are after King Arthur, aren't we?
Oh, well, if it's King Arthur, what's he got around him?
Anyway, that's pretty impressive video.
You're telling me, yeah.
And I mean, I guess it's a little risky, but we'll share it anyway. And yeah, I just wish we're going to wrap this up. I think we have to. You've got to get on to your next one, and I've got to get to work. But as it's still morning here in the U.S. Yeah. But anyway, yeah, I really, my ardent desire is to get over and to, you know, go out with the team. And over the years, I have enlisted a lot of professionals, because I know that although Alan and Barham unfortunately managed to alienate many of them, we need them. So, I have struck up friendships with various archaeologists, and also some of the technologists who would do like whose business is ground penetrating radar and all that sort of stuff. And it's just a function of money. You know, we just really need somehow we need to raise the hundreds of thousands of dollars to be able to undertake these explorations. And then, of course, with some of these sites, because Alan and Barham, you know, WB brought attention to them, they've now been made scheduled monuments, which would also mean that we would have to plead with the authorities to get permission to do anything, to investigate, because, well, you know, this might be a good way to come back to the point that I failed to make earlier, but I think after 20 plus years of being a part of their researches and getting over and trying to help and trying to get American help involved, and finding myself stymied even over here by people who's expressed really no interest. I mean, they continue to do these pointless, stupid history, quote unquote, history shows where someone goes out and looks at sites and never finds anything, but, you know, they'll just string you along for 50 minutes and then, well, we didn't find anything, so, but whereas we could definitely find something, but no one seems to have an interest. And the point I wanted to make earlier is that after 20 years, I really think that the powers that are in charge, really don't want this stuff to be uncovered. Now, they've got additional reasons for concern with migration and immigration and everything. They probably don't want to stir the pot when it comes to national feeling. I think the take seems to be in archaeology these days, and anthropology, and what you get from watching most of these sanctioned documentaries about the Dark Ages and everything is that, there was no great incursion by the Saxons. The line seems to be now it was a gentle migration, and because we can't find sites for great battles.
Yeah,
and they
right.
don't go, they don't look in Baden. We can't find these places where these great conflicts that they write about took place. So they must all be just made up stories, to bolster people, and they couldn't have happened. So again, they just call into question the old records. And I think academia, wants to foster this idea. Why can't we all just be nice to each other and get along? And so they try to squash native feeling. The whole anti-Brexit move was just, we're all just one big happy family.
Yeah.
And, why can't we all just intermingle and all the rest of that jazz? So I think there's that movement that just works against trying to actually prove that the past actually happened.
Yeah,
definitely.
definitely.
I think the mindset now of academia is, let's just ignore the past as best we can. I don't know what history teachers must do in academia now. They don't get out in the field. They're probably just happy, talking about texts that they that they can now just label as mythological or legendary, or these are just the stories that our ancestors told each other, but they don't have to have any basis in truth. Or if they do have some basis in truth, it must be so far buried into the past that, we can only guess what their origins might be. So I really think that this project requires a lot of money, and then we would really need some influential people to help.
Yeah, definitely.
Support it, because I'm not even sure money by itself would be enough to carry out all the work that it requires and that it deserves. But never say never.
That's right. You might bump into.
And never stop. And I'm never going to stop as long as there's breath in me and energy and strength. And I'm definitely going to get over there and hopefully, Bob Morgan, Tim Lewis, and David Mosley, Steve Pohl, we can get all these guys together. You, if you're interested in,
I'll be interested. I'll be there.
And we can go out and film some of these sites. Maybe if we can get enough money together and we don't have any restrictions necessarily, I could reach out to some friends that I know and whom we'd have to pay for, and we could get some real genuine equipment that no one, the results of which no one could deny, and make some progress here in proving that Allen and Barham and Ross, God bless him, we're on to something, and that the past is real.
Yeah.
The past is true, and as William Faulkner would have said, the past is never past.
Beautiful words. Thank you very much, Paul. Wonderful sentiments there. And that was very interesting, highly illuminating, entertaining, and everybody's going to love it. I know they are.
Well, I look forward to it. Good luck editing. We'll have to do this again, Okay.
Oh, definitely. My pleasure. Thank you very much for your time and joining us today.
It was a pleasure, Paul.
Cheers. Bye. Well, thank you very much, Paul. You made some great points in the video, and your memories, photographs, and the videos were a pleasure to hear and see. And that one with the gold has really set the chat alight. There's more good news to come. Paul has just said in the chat he's delved into his storage of original videos, which he took on visits to the UK, and as also a way to digitalize them. So we are going to be in for some real treats in the very near future. Let's take a quick look at today's chat. So Marshall Abraham said the intertwined ovals are definitely British, and that was in connection with Chedworth Villa, supposedly Roman villa. And she also said that Welsh Ripper had given us too much information. Legolas Greenleaf has just gotten in from a site visit, the Fortress of Morgan at Margam, and that'll be featured in an upcoming video. Looking forward to that. Hippie Shake says he has a film of Ross reading the Bishop of Bethlehem's grave. Now I'm sure I can remember first time out, having read Holy Kingdom, that I popped into Cooper's Field and looked at that grave, and I was sure that all the lettering was still in brass, polished brass as well, and it's all been robbed in the last 10-20 years. I'm not sure when. I'll have to see if I can find some old photographs myself. Hippie Shake has put that on his own YouTube channel, so we can find out about that and share the links. Gary Taylor fondly remembered a site visit which ended in the old arcade. And he went on to say about the Mountain of Gold. He's not sure which would come first, the digging hard and deep or the pub. Len said he went out with Alan Wilson in the 60s, and hopefully, Len, you've got photographs. So if anybody has photographs of site visits with Alan Wilson, Barham Blackett, or anybody else for that matter, or videos, especially videos, and like Paul Hartel, if you can digitalize them and get them onto YouTube, that would be absolutely amazing. Well, thank you all for joining us today, and I hope you enjoyed our time together. I know I did. Thank you to Angela and the boys, and to all the volunteers who work behind the scenes. Here's Arnie again with two pieces for our enjoyment, last week's and this week's, and he's making really good progress, isn't he? He is. He's amazing. Margaret just said, you know, how impressed she is with his progress. Don't forget now, if you've got recollections of site visits and videos, I'd love to do a Zoom chat for content for this YouTube channel. With any luck, we're going to be getting more than we can handle. That'll be the day. I'm going to play one last song now. Natalie Eleanor, local to me, in the choir I'm in, and she's singing, but I'm putting the photographs out, so it's just a bit of an experiment really to see how it would look. I used to use the Microsoft software to put photos onto Facebook, and it was so easy to use, but they changed the software, so I've given it a go, and here we have it.
Heard there was a secret chord that David played and it pleased the Lord, but you don't really care for music, do ya? Well, it goes like this: the fourth, the fifth, the minor fall, the major lift, the baffled king composing hallelujah. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Your faith was strong, but you needed proof. You saw her bathing on the roof, her beauty and the moonlight overthrew ya. She tied you to her kitchen chair, she broke your throne and she cut your hair, and from your lips she drew the hallelujah. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Well, maybe there's a God above, but all I've ever learned from love was how to shoot somebody who I truly love. And it's not a cry that you hear at night, it's not someone who has seen the light, it's a cold and it's a broken hallelujah. Hallelujah, hallelujah,
Well, that's all, folks. Some lovely commentary in the chats. Everybody's wishing everybody a happy Easter, especially the family down in West Wales. And I'd like to end it with that then, and I'll play the end graphics and stop the recording. Bye all, Nostar, Auf Wiedersehen, adieu, au revoir, and don't forget, if you seek, you will find.
Thank you for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed that and found it informative. Britain's Hidden History Group has so much more going on our YouTube channel. The one you're watching now, there's a live stream, 8 o'clock UK time every Sunday. We speak to people like Wilson and Blackett, reprint their old books and help produce new ones. We go researching to the tops of mountains, all the way down to the bottoms of caves. Busily recording the books, you can listen to them as well, and looking at mysteries and working out what we're not being taught in schools and preserving it, because the physical and written evidence is rapidly disappearing. You can also find out how to read ancient writing and hieroglyphs using the Welsh language. It's amazing. There's a Facebook group where this is being discussed. Along with a website, you can buy the books and help us. Also, as you can see, there's now a Patreon page where just a few pounds a month will make all the difference in trying to keep the project going and preserve this history for future generations, and also to find out for ourselves what is going on, what is Britain's hidden history. So until the next time, heddiw!